Hemshech Chaim Beis, Volume 1. We're in the middle of chapter 158. Kuf Nun Ches. We're at the bottom of page 314. I just want to go back. No. I am troubled by these lines here. Lula mistapina lemer, I would say there's a line missing. There's words missing. I'm almost convinced there's something. I'm going to call the library to find out the Ksav Yad. I've read it again and again. There's something that's missing. I know we're clapping cup and van because they're the flow. I just have to say this. When he says, Hine gamba efin iseridus harotzen. Right there, Harishal Pitam Vadas is, we can question, but something is wrong. And then, suddenly, next line, Rusad Libu says, Seydus Sube'ez, take of his Gal Seir HaMechen. These two things are too jolting as new inyanim, to make it easy for me to understand how to understand the Havana of it. So, it comes down to that, I think that there's words missing. And to go and break the cup to figure out pshat, and if there may be one word that may be different.
So that's what I'm saying. We should go further and you'll find.
No, I will. But I want to say this for the record. So that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
it's okay, sir.
For the record, there must be a word missing at shots. That's why I don't understand it well.
Anyway, so the point being is that because also there's another thing that he says it's distinguished between rotzen and Seydus Rusa Deliba, where he made it very clear that rotzen is rotzen Rusa Deliba.
We use it together.
So I think Havana we got right, which is, let me just sum it up, and that is that we're talking here about the Kav Hamida that measures and makes sure that every sphere is at potave. It determines the flow, like a true gauge, a true regulator, and allocates also. But here we're talking about also measures and that limits, and therefore, as he began, if Kesser keeps flowing without stop, which in Aveda and in Keches Adam is Rotzen, and Aveda is Rusa Deliba. So we have three things. Kesser is the level in Kabbalah, the Sfira. In Keches HaNefesh, in the faculties of a person, it's called Rotzen, and Naved is called Rusa Deliba. If that continues flowing without any stop, it will not allow intelligence to emerge. So the whole discussion about Rusa Deliba is that it is essentially not a Davar Sichli. And even the Rusa Deliba that we discussed. So there's the plain Rusa Deliba, the one that comes like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and Asher Shemei Tshuva, that's clear. Is something that's l'mayla metam v'das, that just is an awakening. So that clearly, in that state of being, there's no seichel involved, like you said. But to Shar Hashanah, the rest of the year, when they're doing the regular work, and a person has a bonus, that brings him to Rusa Deliba, even though it brings it to there. However, once he's there, the excitement takes over and nevad, and the seichel goes away. So we see again that Rusa Deliba and Seichel do not go hand in hand. And the third type of Rusa Deliba, which is where he talked to Ava B'Tainugim, that the Rusa Deliba also penetrates Seichel, where because the person is not just contemplating on the grandeur of God and standing in awe, but also has an appreciation of where he is, the Eifenhaf law. So they're true that there the Kav Hamida clearly, seemingly also has the Knei Hamida, is what I would say. That there's a bigger flow. It's more than just the regular flow. It's clear. But Kav Hamida, remember, is pure creation. It's how things are based on creation. Not even the others. It's how the regular flow and the pipes work. And there, Rotzen and Seichel are contradictory. Or better put, Rotzen needs to be stopped before Seichel takes over. So of course, there's deeper levels. And that's the whole point. We're going to be talking about expanding the pipes. And the whole point here is to say that Kav Hamida is the minimal flow, and Knei Hamida is a greater flow, to the point of Matan Torah where it goes even deeper. So clearly, Ava B'Tainugim, it's not a surprise that we're going to find a Rusa Deliba that's going to connect with Seichel. Now, another thing I wanted to add that we spoke about was a very key point, and also was not so clear to me. I just want to point out it's not clear to me exactly. He says, Pedikuf Nunal L'Chedim is Daminhem. I read Pedikuf Nunal many times, and I'm not sure what he means exactly. What's mizdamet to what? What's compared to what is similar? Apparently, it looks like he's talking about that there's what's similar is that the Hergish Ein Sof and the Hergish of the Haflah of Ein Sof are similar. And so, but I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. But bottom line is, what is definitely clear is that middas don't work like Rusa Deliba. So the clear parentheses, the real bottom line, if you say, why did the Rebbe Rashab write a parentheses? He wanted to distinguish between the excitement of Rusa Deliba, the desire from the heart, and the excitement in the middas. That they're very different types of excitement. With the distinctions he made, I'm just going to sum it up, just for clarity purposes. And again, there's lines that need clarity, so I can't say exact pshat, but Havana is distinction number one is in the actual difference between the two. Middas function. I'm excited because something is there for me. In this case, God, Kirvis Le'Elikim, as he said, Elikim Le'Tev, Kirvis Elikim Le'Tev. So you're feeling godliness. It's Hergesh Atzmi. You're absolutely your personality and identity are there, and you want the godliness. In Rusa Deliba, it's the opposite. The excitement is getting out of yourself and being absorbed into the source. That was the word. Absorbed into the source. However, there too, there's a level where yesh mishareitza. There's still a rotzen, there's still a desire, so there's something there that's being absorbed. But it's not about me remaining an identity and liking it. Here, it's being absorbed into the source. And then there's a state, like he said, makif of yechida, where the absorption is complete without even a desire or any bechira or will. It's just total fusion, total absorption. That's one difference. So Rusa Deliba is that. So Rusa Deliba is that Ratzon. So in this case, Rusa Deliba that absorbs is clearly, even though his bonus leads to that, but it leads it to a place that you're going to absorb. There, the his bonus b'midas leads you into appreciating something and you want it. That's the key difference. So, regarding the kava midah, how does that play itself out? It plays itself out that Rusa Deliba is being absorbed. When you're absorbed, you can't be thinking seichel. Seichel, you're already an identity that's thinking. You can argue. Whereas here, you're just like the flame that's being absorbed into the source. Okay, so that is Rusa Deliba. So the seichel doesn't really work there. Whereas by midas, you could say the seichel is still somewhat. I'm just speculating, going all the way. It's still somewhat there. Because it is what taught the midah to say this is good for me. So, and since you're not being absorbed into anything, you're just appreciating it. So it's true, as we learned, it's not etzema seichel. It's not even, it's a ha'ara, but it's somewhat seichel in the midah. The seichel has now trained the midah to appreciate this is godly, is good for you. The giluyim, like you said. So that's distinction number one. Distinction number two is what he calls eifen ha'aratzen. Eifen. He said it as Saratzen. And here's the key difference. Let me just think for a second. Okay. Here it's almost the other way around. The midas, if they're strong and alive and kicking, they will confuse and be mevalbel the mechen. So the mind has to be concealed from them because they're emotions. Rusa Deliba, the mind, is only a catalyst. And as such, even if the mind was powerfully there, Rusa Deliba will ignore it, so to speak, because it is in its own track. So being absorbed is not, it's in other words, let's see a second here. So he calls it, even if the Ratzon is Galus Eir HaMechen, even Be'ez take of his Galus Eir HaMechen, you also have the Eserus. That's not possible. If you have the take of his galus ed hamechen, you cannot have a midah because a midah will be mevalbel that. That's the key thing. And Rusa Deliba, you could have both together. Again, we need havana in it, but it says it could be there, and it's understandable why, because it's like almost like a it's a paradox. It's almost like paradoxical to the first point. The first point, the midah is far more dependent on seichel, and therefore seichel still reigns there somewhat, I would say. Whereas Rusad Liba, once you're absorbed, the seichel was just a way to get you there. It's its own excitement. The midah's excitement is because it was trained. It doesn't have it on its own. That's the key. And I think that's where he says at the end, so that's the va'oid. Then comes the third point where he makes, va'oid, there's the va'oid after the parentheses. Well, what I just said now actually is the va'oid. I'm sorry. So I think point number 2 is just that when moichin is bizgalus, midas cannot be bizgalus except as keiches nalamim. Right? That's clear. Whereas Rusad Liba, haratzna b'teikev is galus hameichin. Says haratzna b'teikev is galus hameichin. Okay. And point number 3 is what I just said. That Hamida is from the Hesag of Yisrael. It comes from it. It's a direct outgrowth of the contemplation. Rusad Liba is not an outgrowth. Rusad Liba is a Ratzon Atzmi within the soul. However, it could be concealed. So you need a catalyst to wake it up. So you need the hafla of Ein Sof. But the point is, Hergesh Ein Sof. It's not the Hizbonus. Midah, if there's no Hizbonus, it's not going to be awakened. Midah, if you don't have contemplation, you'll desire Elam Haza. You'll desire material things. Rusad Liba is in you. V'araya by Yom Kippur, Roshan Yom Kippur, it awakens without anything. So when during the rest of the year when it's awakened, it means that the awakening through his bodiness is only a catalyst. And the real thing is the Hergesh Ein Sof. Whereas Midah would not have, it says clearly, Ach b'midas, it's below the Meich. And then he concludes it all, right. And because he feels Ein Sof, that's where he feels the Seichel goes away. In the Midah, the reason the Seichel is not there in the Midah is because the Midah is alive. If the Seichel is alive, the Midah cannot be powerful. Here's the opposite. The reason the Seichel goes away is because you're feeling godliness itself. By the Midah, it's the opposite. You want to feel yourself, you feel, so that's why it goes away from the intelligence. And the bottom line is, like in the sense of B'cholze, Ikar Sibas Hadovadu, and all of this, meaning in the whole picture, Cholze here doesn't mean, like Cholze sometimes it means a qualification, and nevertheless, that's not what he means here. B'cholze, Ikar Sibas, I think B'cholze means in all of this, the Ikar is that the Midas is a Ratzna Aseh. It has to be created. You have to, what's it called? It's an acquired desire. It's an acquired desire. And Rusad Liba, it's an inherent desire. That's the difference. As an acquired desire, it's totally bedover, and the kol ikar avos from the seichel comes from intelligence. And Rusad Liba, it's a ratzon atzmi. Okay.
When you have your Rusad Liba, do you lose your identity, or assume God's identity, or you're in the original identity? I have trouble deciding that.
What means an original identity? What does that word mean?
You have the original tzvi, and I.
When you say original, God created a soul, so the soul is going back to its natural place.
Right, no, the natural place is God. It's a natural offshoot of
Tanya, he says, it's like a flame. It's like a flame that goes back to its source.
Do you lose your own identity at that point, or you feel?
What do you mean by identity? I'm not sure what you mean by identity. Define identity. Nefesh Habamis? Yes, you lose the Nefesh Habamis. That identity? Define identity. Identity is a very vague word for me.
Even the Seichel, the Nefesh Elokis seems to go into...
Never. It's bottom line, it's a sense of something beyond existence.
Are you looking down?
And the soul is sensing that part. I mean, I don't understand what the question is. A soul comes into a body. Identity that I understand is a soul inside of a body, where it senses itself, its needs. Right. Midas. Let's not talk mathematics here. Talk practical. Practical. Right now, I don't know what you mean. Define it. It's a very vague word. It. What you talking about? It.
Do you feel yourself?
No, it's Hergesh Atzmei is Midas. Rusad Liba is no Hergesh Atzmei.
You feel like You feel like
You're talking theoretically. You're not thinking
I want
practical.
to know if they experienced it. That's it.
But let's define the opposite, and you tell me. He says clearly, midas means a person feels something is good for me. It could be money. It could be food.
It's a yesh.
It could be elikus, godliness. I don't know. You like the word yes? Fine. I'm speaking simple
Yes,
English.
he's other. He's an other. He's
I don't know. When you say words like that, it confuses me because I don't know what you mean by yes.
experiencing God.
Okay. So that's what it is. A person, no, he's feeling that this is good for me. So like he says, hergesh atzmei, it's more mitzias. It's his existence. Right? So before he was feeling something is good for me that may be material. Now he feels that something is good for me is godliness. Why? Because he contemplated that God gives me health and life. And I want life. Like you said earlier. Giluyim in chapter Kuf Nun, 150. That's midas. This Liberty says the opposite. He uses his words. It's his battle. He brings from Tanya. That the opposite is to go out of your feeling self. There's no self here. The self that you feel is good for you. That's not what. That's midas. Rusa Lib is being absorbed in the divine source. What does that mean? That the soul is dominating and its flame is reaching upward to a place that's beyond existence. Is that our true identity? Yeah, of course you can call that. That's the true identity of a human being. That's why identity is a meaningless word. Depends what you call identity.
You mean, you're still a soul and a body. You're still everything. It's just that you're in
You
that state
say,
of.
man, I feel good.
That's midas. That's what he says is
You don't
midas.
say, man, I feel good at that.
I don't know. You don't say anything. You don't think in those terms. The whole thing is not in those terms.
If you were going to evaluate what's going on at that point,
You don't evaluate.
you can't evaluate.
No.
There is a stage of where
As soon as you're evaluating, you're talking about an outsider.
It's like life. You don't feel it.
Journalists evaluate, not people experience. Observers evaluate.
there's still a stage of awareness, though, the first level of what's
That's meichen, awareness, consciousness.
No, he means yesh misharetz. He says that because it's still rotzen. Rotzen means that there's a desire. So something is desiring. So subtly saying there is still a yesh. In other words, there is an element of you wanting it. But what is it that's being wanted? Absorption, not more good for me. There would be real practical nafkamina between the two. There are differences. One would definitely not. The first one, midas, means first of all it could dissipate. In a sense, what do you mean dissipate? Because suddenly the midah can decide it wants something else that's good for it. In Rusa Deliba that doesn't happen. It can dissipate, but it's not going to want something else. The Rusa Deliba just goes back undercover. The second thing is that the midas, if you don't feel it's really that good for you, you're going to be less committed. The Rusa Liba, once it's awake, it's going all the way. That's what its absorption is complete. It's many differences that you can. He doesn't spell out the differences, but midas is basically because it's good for you. It's like he says, tluya b'davar. It's dependent on something. It's dependent on you appreciating its goodness. Rusa Liba is not dependent on such appreciation. Rusa Liba is like a soul that's been awakened. It just naturally elevates. You have to remember that without this is with his bananus. Without his bananus, Rusa Liba awakens like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Altogether you don't need anything. It can just awaken on its own. So you see clearly it's not like a midah. What's awakening? Not that it's good for me. It's awakening you just that you're drawn to you long for something greater than yourself. It's a very big different experience.
the Seichel Nevod. I just wondered if it didn't mean that because the Rusa Riba is not limited.
Once you get into the excitement of that desire of the heart to be absorbed, the seichel falls to the wayside.
That's what I want to ask.
It's lost, basically. It doesn't have any role anymore. Its role was very much almost like a shovel to find the treasure. But once you find the treasure, what do you need the shovel for?
Or an igniter, you ignite the fire.
Yeah. With Midas, it's not that way. Midas are far more dependent on the seichel because without it, they don't have the connection.
Because the seichel is like the fuel of the midas. Once the fuel goes out, the midas.
Right, because the midas will go back to its own, because they don't have. Rusa Delib is a natural desire for the divine. Midas don't have a natural desire for the divine. Midas are a natural desire for self-interest, whatever that interest is. Yeah, Midas and
What I wanted to say.
the only thing you could say is Midas and Atzilus are also godly. However, remember we learned Chetzenis Midas, their focus is to create. So on their own, they're not looking to be absorbed. They're looking to fulfill the desire of God to create. So they're on their way down. They're basically there to have an interaction with something other. In Kedusha, that's what a midah is. By us, a midah is other, is meaning I want to satisfy my needs. The midas in Atzilus, as opposed to Ratzon of Atzilus, their role is to express divine to the other. Chesed, to give. Moichin of Atzilus, his role is to understand the divine. And Ratzon of Atzilus Keser is to, what does God want? Remember the difference between Eira Bli Gvul and Eira Gvul. Eira Bli, they're all divine. I'm talking now above, now not below. Above, Eira Bli Gvul is all it is a divine expression. Eira Gvul is divine expression to create. So fundamentally it's already a concealed state, because its point now is not revealing godliness. It's fulfilling God's will to create a structure. So the Eira Gvul is going to be commensurate to the structure. I'm explaining, what midas are in Atzilus. Because what does it mean? What means Hergesh Atzmei in Atzilus? Here he's not talking about this. I'm just qualifying it. But when it comes down on earth here, Hergesh Atzmei means the midah focuses on you and others. Moichin helps the midah understand there's something more than you. There's a God, and it's also good for you. Rusa Deliba is the Ratzon in your nefesh. It's Chai Yechida of your neshama. It's a whole different world. Understand? Midas is down here. Midas is interacting with the world, interacting with others. Ratzon is here. Moichin is in the middle. So if you awaken the Ratzon, either by it's automatically awaken Rosh Hashanah or through Moichin to help, once you have that ignited, the Moichin is nevad. It's not. Its role was only an igniter.
Because it's lower. It's lower, that's why.
And Midas, on the other hand, need trainer. Midas is like the students in the school. The teacher's gone, the students are going to go, what do they say? When the cats leave, the mice play. The cat is away, the mice play. Right. And Ratzon, you could say is concealed, but the Keser, the Ratzon of a nefesh, Yechai Yechida of your soul, at best can go to sleep and be dormant, but it's not going to be drawn to something else. That's another way of putting this whole thing in context. So it's very different. Now, why he doesn't say exactly what I just said here? He does say it later. He says, "Midas is lamat mesechel." I understand, because the Rebbe Rashab has a very flow of consciousness, and he's writing, with the ganzen breitkeit as he gets it. But it's definitely a very dense piece. That if I would like translate this, I would translate it much slower and, bit by bit, because it's he's almost, it's overwhelming.
Very concentrated.
Yeah, I mean it's not uncommon. I can tell from the writing that this was written afterwards, and that it was written very, like a very open flow of consciousness. It wasn't written because you see other places Ayin Beis is far more meticulous and slower. I'm not Chaz v'Shalom questioning the Rebbe Rashab style, but you can see different styles. You can see sometimes where he starts building it line by line, and you see it's like more spoon-fed. So also, this is clearly not. Looks to me like a question was asked to the Rebbe Rashab, or he himself had a question on things that he was saying, because it's also not direct connection. If you skip the L'cheira, you're not missing anything in the pure Havana. I mean, obviously there's probably details, but it's going into Midas. We're not talking about Midas. But I guess because when you read this, he wanted to qualify the Midas, that the excitement of Lusad Liba is not the excitement of Midas. But in the process, he's already giving us new ideas of Kav HaMidah too. Because remember, we're soon going to learn that the Seichel has to be concealed for Midas too, just like Ratzon has to be concealed for Chochmah to emerge, Chochmah has to be concealed for Midas to emerge. So he's already saying that. But you could see from the way he's writing, I mean, I can tell immediately that this is written probably afterwards. I'm almost sure it's afterwards. Yeah, for sure. You could see.
You didn't get back to it.
No, because you see, he adds lines, there's things. You can tell sometimes. You read it. It's not that complicated to see.
A very large key could be that.
That doesn't mean anything. I've seen there are parentheses that go for long that are clearly written the first time, and he wanted it to be. Yeah, there's one I remember back. You could see that it's like an additional element. It doesn't change anything. It just.
I learned a lot from this.
It's a tremendous parenthesis, but you really have to break it down. And I still contend. I think that there's a line here, either missing a word or maybe a line, even a whole line missing. I would not be shocked that there's a line missing here.
The last 30 years, I'm getting mixed up with Ratzon.
Can you show me the first edition here of Ayin Beis a minute?
421, the last chapter. It's so hard. It's so rough.
because even the highest levels of seichel are limited.
No, only
And never means
One second, before you go anywhere. No difference. And let me see yours a moment. I'm just trying to see if there's any. Sometimes these editions have different. I'm going to call them. It's making me crazy. I may be wrong. Look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Then we have to brech cup to figure out how these lines work. And I'm not trying to suggest. I'm not not like those that say I don't understand. That means that there's a mistake. I think it's because it could be densely written. That's why. And there's this thing. This take of his Galus Eramechin. Say this is clearly throws in a very serious monkey wrench. A minute. Okay, fine.
doesn't mean that
I guess maybe it means that until you sit down and daven and have Rus Liber, you're not going to really get it. That's what it is. You could talk all day.
We'll have to have you report back without experience.
One day.
Right, exactly. So there's some things that you can delude yourself until you don't have it.
What would that be?
Now they say that Gilead Meichen is, to me, if I'm right, and I speculate, I'm guessing, if it's correct, and it would be unbelievable, the Rebbe Rashab is speaking like on the level of himself. That on a Rebbe suddenly has this burst. The words themselves. Think about it. He said, "But take if his galus er hameichen." Well, tell me what that means. Take if his galus er hameichen. It means a burst of creativity or a burst of mind.
Awareness.
Yeah, it's a burst. It's not just. He says it's take if. Say it as Gilead Meichen. So it sounds to me like someone who has had learning Chassidus and suddenly has a revelation, a cognitive revelation. I mean, and that is, but it's a lakus, right? We're not talking about Meichen. So since it's a lakus, it wakens up the Rus Liber. That's what it sounds, and there's not a contradiction. What's the contradiction? The Rebbe suddenly has an unbelievable take of Gilead Meichen, and he has suddenly at the same time a desire for the divine. What's the contradiction? The contradiction by us, it's a contradiction because our seichel is minimal, and our Rus Liber is very fragile. So so there you have to be very careful how you move from seichel to Rus Liber, and even then, once there's the Rus Liber, nevad, the seichel goes aside, and now you're excited. But there's definitely a Rus Liber that comes from a burst, and it's not a contradiction. In Meichen and Midas, it would be a contradiction, because a Midah means you're applying yourself either to what you feel or to what another. That cannot be when you're Galus Eira Meichen. You can't be thinking about yourself or about others. Rus Liber, why not? They're both godly. That's like by the Ava B'Tainugim. It's very similar. So you have a burst of divine conscious mind, and you have a burst of divine desire. It's all great. And like you said, that's why? Because like I said, about the difference between how a Rebbe stands in Kodesh Kodashim and how a regular person. So if you start using your seichel, you're going to not be able to be there.
It's like the opposite.
You have to, so to speak, absorb. You have to lose yourself. But someone who has his galus eira meichen of a lakus, what's the contradiction? It's like they say that all the Nevi'im, when they were misnave, they couldn't stand straight. They had to fall. And with misnave, because their spirals was too great. Moshe was able to stand, almost like, and able to absorb it all. Why? Because his meichen was a lakus. So it wasn't a contradiction. Anyone else starts using intelligence in a place where you should be in complete awe, it's going to be a contradiction. But someone whose galus eira meichen is a lakus, what's the problem? It's all a lakus. Divine intelligence, divine ratzon, and so on. It's still not the same level. This is Meichin of Elikus, and this is Rus Liber Ratzon. But that's, to me, what it sounds like, right, this little piece here. But how it suddenly throws...
Page Shakai, like the others. Look at it.
I'm not saying, what's a Shaddai?
You're Dalit. I mean, it's...
Yeah, the problem is that when the Rebbe Rashab wrote it, it was different pages.
I understand, but it's not good about that.
Okay, maybe it was Havaya when he wrote it. Okay, listen. I don't want to resort to now page numbers. I'm trying to understand the pshat before we get to the Hashgacha.
14 is pi, it's endless. It's infinite.
Whoa, that's good. That's pretty good.
Keep on going in circles over here.
That's
All
interesting.
right, 3.14,
I
yeah.
had a treatise about the shaka and pi as
Well, Dai by Lomi, never ends.
No, but Shaddai would be 3.41. If you write it correctly. Okay, that we will go on. There's no question, there's very high levels of Avodah here. Remember, the Rebbe Rashab is also writing not just for the lowest common denominator. He's writing for everybody. So Chassidim who really, so you have to remember there's definitely levels here that we're not really at, one should say. And I mean, I'm sure we could try to be a bit in some Zohar Rampin way. Everybody has a microcosm, but so I'm not surprised that there are going to be levels that are far, far beyond our ability to really understand how one reaches there. But I think but we can understand it through this type of like extrapolation. Like I just said, by us a burst of seichel doesn't go hand in hand with a burst usually of elikus. Sometimes, yeah, it could, but usually for us it works the other way around. Slowly, you think about something like this, you meditate, like you said, as a catalyst, and then it wakens up. But it could happen also. I mean, listen, you could be learning a mimer and have a very strong resonance of the idea, and has a immediate Rus and Deliba is awakened from it. That's totally possible. The problem is the Rus and Deliba that awakens by us. What do we do with it? For us at best, it's a sense of transcendence. I mean, I speak for myself. It's a sense that the reality is far greater than you and I, and something far beyond. But a desire to be absorbed in it is, I haven't reached that so often.
Yom Kippur, when you lose your appetite completely. I mean,
my Yom Kippur has been contaminated because the mechanics of mechanical Yom Kippur has basically extinguished. When I could see someone who never experienced Yom Kippur having a Yechid experience far more than a FFB. Because we grew up with it just mechanically. You just sit there, and I'm being very honest. We do it like you make like any other ritual.
I'm amazed by it. I'm doing it 40 years.
Because for you, it's what you weren't born into it.
And I fasted even when I was.
How about you? No, listen. Don't get me wrong. There's an awesome moment. The whole training. I mean, by me 4 a.m. already. I'm already jumping because my father used to schlep me to go to Kapparas. In those days, Kapparas was not a convenient thing. You had to this and this. But sometimes I wonder, to be very honest, being a skeptic, whether this is my body was trained. Like Yom Kippur, you got to be running, and there's mikvahs and this. There's like a whole. Besides, I mean, thank God I don't have guilt. But if you have a little guilt, man, Erev Yom Kippur is like the day of the guilty. You absolve yourself of all sins and etc. etc. So I'm just that's the ritualistic part of it. But I fully understand the spiritual part of it.
It is the day of the guilty, though. Erev Yom Kippur is supposed to be.
Look, you sit in shul all day, sit in white, and you're fasting. Everyone's davening, and a certain communal power. There's that sense, kol nidrei. The poetry of Yom Kippur I fully understand. I know how to communicate.
Haskell brothers just sit and cry all day.
Many. Okay, but then the question is not to throw any cold water on it, and what about the day after Yom Kippur? You see people like someone who was like in a Din Torah suddenly dropped a Din Torah. Do you see anybody being less vicious?
That's what the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe Shab. Was jetzt? He said,
Instead, so that's where my cynicism starts rolling in. So I say, okay, very nice. We were all lifted for a day on the wings of Yom Kippur, and then what? I've never seen someone really changed. That's what bothers me, personally. I know I'm saying it for all to hear on YouTube, but I think that really bothers me. Because then I say, so what? So, okay, so we all have moments. Fine. What do you think about that?
But that's the question that the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya.
No, fine, I understand the question. I'm not the first person to ask. I'm asking, what do you think about that? You do?
No, I do.
Okay, so then you're good. I'm glad to hear. I asked you what you asked. I didn't say, I'm not saying everybody, but that's what bothered me most. That's what bothers me most. Now, it doesn't bother me. I'm not criticizing. I understand why. Because Elam Haz is a very powerful place. So, and I'm not questioning the truth of Yom Kippur. It's just that type of... The only one I could see is a Rebbe. The Rebbe, for him, he's a constant state of Elokus, so Yom Kippur definitely,
You probably change. It's like you're not a Baal Taiva. You don't, the guys that are extreme like me, I'm a real Baal Taiva, and I can feel the
Someone just told me yesterday, someone said to the Rebbe after the holiday season, once after Tishrei, Sedurgan and Nochat Tishrei. Another Tishrei passed, and the Rebbe said, no, another Tishrei was added. Then we say, Sedurgan Nochat Pesach. It passed, another holiday passed.
Another day closer to Mashiach.
So, and I think they're both right. The person who was passed, because the Taka passed for by the Rebbe, it's an addition. That's the difference. Good to vote, right? For him it passed, for him he added. There was also someone told me, in a similar vein, someone wrote to the Rebbe, Parashidach, they were going on a date, and they said, should they, what did they say? They asked him, is all weiter our race game? Which means, should we so the Rebbe said, nicht weiter, nenter. Weiter means further. The Rebbe says, not further, closer. In other words, further means you're going away. You're getting closer, you're not going further.
Should we continue to further the relationship? That's
right. You really say. Right. And what does that matter? Huh?
Should they end up getting married?
I assume so. I don't know, but it's regardless. If they were meant to be, I guess so.
With that direction?
But that was the objective. You don't go dating to go further. You're dating to get closer.
I'm joking.
Leib Grona tells the story that when he was dating, he asked the Rebbe, should he continue? So I told the story. Not whether he shouldn't get married. Should he continue? So the Rebbe said like this. The Rebbe touched his heart, the Rebbe's own heart, and says, "Avdi and Yanim, these things, not your father can help you, not your mother can help you, not I can help you." And in other words, once you decide, then the question, as the Rebbe bracha, is it a proper shidduch? That's a different question. It's not the Rebbe's telling you should like this person. That you have to decide. Anyway.
Very often things are asked when you don't really like each other, you sit and you want to know if maybe you'll eventually like each other if you still persevere. Because not all the time do people have this thing.
Yeah, it's a discussion. That's a whole Rusa Deliba discussion.
That's what it is, exactly.
It's not a token from Malcolm.
Yeah. Look, I remember also I talk about words. I was once upstairs in 770 those years of Tishrei when guests would come. So there was a period where Mincha Ma'ariv was upstairs unless there was too big of a crowd. Later it was always downstairs because the crowd was always big. So they would decide last minute. The Rebbe would come in. If it was really packed, they would announce it and the Rebbe would go down. The Rebbe would go back to his room, go down or whatever. So once they said, Leibel Bestritsky, I got squashed and I don't even know how I got there. But I was standing very close to the Rebbe. And I don't know if anybody heard it except me. So Leibel Bestritsky announced, Mincha wird sein unten. Mincha will be below, unten, downstairs. And the Rebbe said quietly, he said, in a shul nicht in unten. In a shul there's no, unten is more than just, unten means like below. So he said, in shul nicht in unten. So whenever I hear the people don't go unten upstairs, I say, in shul nicht in unten.
The German word.
Yeah, it's in Yiddish too. Unten means, Eben, unten, Eberster. Unterster. That's the difference. Eberster means the one above. Eber, it's like Eberster, you say the higher floor. And Unterster means the one below. Okay. Now back to the climbing Mount Everest.
It's the same words, Untermensch.
Yiddish is taken from German.
Subhuman, they call it, Untermensch.
Yeah, right, an Ubermensch. An Ubermensch.
Right.
Yeah.
Ubermensch, yeah.
Superior person.
Okay. So bottom line is, all this is in Aveda. Rusa Deliba is Rotzen in faculties of the person, and Keser in the spheres. All to say that the Kav HaMidah is necessary to tell Ad Potove. It's like the rule that says the water shall stop here and here shall be land. You ever stand by an ocean, you almost see it's like miraculous. Like, why does the ocean not just flood the whole earth? There's a command, Ad Potove. There's actually a pasuk, I think he says, in the Nevi'im. I wrote about it at the time of the tsunami. Anyway, bottom line, the boundaries of existence are defined by the Kav HaMidah, by this measuring, Butzina de Kardinisa, which we found, the third interpretation, by the way, means that it's a measuring stick. Right? From the Gemara, what do you call it? The Kadri, huh? Evan Kadri, huh? Yeah. Anyway, so it's a matter of measuring, but it measures through Gvura. Remember, key thing here is Gvura. Not Chesed yet, Gvura, Kav HaMidah. Because Gvura is what so-called constricts. Like Gvura will stop the flow, or regulate the flow, more accurately. And that is what the whole point of everything we just discussed. So he discussed it also in Aveda, which actually helps us understand it in Haskalah, because what you're dealing with here is that even in Aveda you need to have boundaries. If you have an overwhelming urge and desire, longing to the divine, there's a need for that, but there's times where that has to subside in order to allow Seichel to emerge, etc., etc. So now he's going to sum it up. So after speaking about all the levels of Rusa Deliba, so he says, Hare Shebizgal, 4 lines from the bottom, 5 lines from the bottom of 314. Hare. So the Hare is the whole Shebizgalos Harotzen Lo Yochelius is Galos HaSeichel. So from all this Hare, then the Rotzen is revealed. You can't have his Galos HaSeichel, like by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, like he said a line before. Then it's not like all year round where you come to an awakening through contemplation and awakening of the emotions through contemplation. Here, the makifim of nefesh, of the nefesh amer, Chai Yechida, which he alluded to on top as well. Chaya being when there's a rotzen for the Rusa Deliba, and Yechida is not even a rotzen, it's complete absorption. You could say like Yom Kippur.
Yechida.
He said that on top of the page.
No, you said Yechida was Atik.
I didn't say that.
This was Arik and the other one was Atik.
In other some places it says that, but here he doesn't say that.
Yesterday.
But I'm talking about what it says here. Inside the Maimon it says Yechida is no rotzen at all, total absorption. Yes. It is correct. It is Atik, and the other one is Arich. Yeah, which is also related. Fine.
So you said on Yom Kippur it's Atik already?
Yom Kippur is Yechida. I said.
Like Atik. It's amazing.
Okay. So now, I just want to go back to the whole beginning of the topic. Back to Shinit Gimel, so we have a good flow. So let's just go back a moment. So he said, in order for a sphere, the lower sphere, to emerge, you need to have the higher sphere to be diminished or concealed. And he gave Kamei Svidas HaKesim, Hayis Pashas Bizgalos Shalab B'chin Sein Sav Lo Yav Shlis Atzilas Svidas HaChachma. And then he gave the Al-Derech Mashal when if Keser would have been completely in a form of Ein Sof, Chachma could not emerge. And he gave the example Al-Derech Mashal Keches HaNefesh, a Rotzen that you can't have. When you have Rotzen Bizgalos, you can't have Seichel. And then he said Ubaveda B'chin Ubaveda Kasher Rotzen Bizgalos Han B'chin Susli Be'en Shaykh HaSichli. I just want to go back to the context. Now we continue. Good? So all this you could say was like a section. Now he continues where he left there. Everybody, are you with me? Yeah? Okay. Now he says like this. V'nei starts a new subject. I mean a new continuation of that subject, but a new step. V'hinei now, behold, now harotzen hu mokar ha-seichel. Desire or Ratzon will is the source of Seichel. Hainu, what does that mean? Hainu kishareitzu this chakim. Which means kishareitzu this chakim. If you don't have a desire, there will not be any intelligence working. A person has to want to use their chachma. Like anything, all the faculties are rendered motionless, basically, without the ratzon. We even learned about mania, the disease and illness, where a person has all the faculties intact, but there's no will. It's like a person who's depressed, or a person who's just not motivated. So ratzon is the makar of seichel. Now he's saying, Lo yirak haratzon be'etzem hadavar. We're not talking about the desire in the thing itself. The bezeh, shereitze b'hadavar lo yhoya adayin ha'is chakmas bezeh. So let's say you want, I'm just thinking, you want to build a certain machine. So you want the machine. It's not that ratzon. We're talking about the ratzon to understand wisdom in the building or the way the machine works. Just using that as an example. The fact that somebody wants something, desires something, that's not, from that alone is not going to emerge, let's call it a creativity, chakmus. Your cognitive tools don't necessarily awaken because of that. Kim kasher reitzel is chakim. So when we talk about reitzel ba'davar, meaning reitzel rotzen this chakim, meaning a desire particularly to use your mind, not just you want the object, you want to use your this chakim to innovate, to create. So the bezeh harihu yered a tret up. With this he descends in Yiddish, tret up. Then a very nice expression. He steps away. It's like he removes himself from the state of ratzon, me'etzem haratzon, from the core desire. V'oz yaskel v'yischakim, and then he conceives and he understands, or yischakel v'yischakim, I would say he, innovates or conceives, conceives and innovates. You can say yaskel v'yischakim. In other words, two things are necessary when the process of intelligence begins to work. You have to want to do it. But then the will has to step aside, and you have to actually apply yourself to now doing it. Now it happens so automatically about us we don't realize it's two steps, but it is two steps. I'll soon give an example how to understand and distinguish.
I think it's two distinct steps. It's not like you realize it. If you want.
No, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's so quick you don't realize it. Like you just sit down, you open the safe, you start learning.
I understand that Gemara. That alone is not going to make you understand it. You just want to understand it. You have to actually learn it. That's the second step. It's two distinct steps.
Actually, I was talking about the reitzel ba'davar means he wants the object. The chakim he wants to understand and learn it.
The reitzel ba'davar he wants to understand this block. No.
Because kasher reitzel is chakim. Not just that he wants the thing. He wants the. So if you're using the example of Gemara, I would say like this. One second. The example of Gemara would be like this. You want to know what it says in the Gemara, the result. That's reitzel ba'davar. Then you need a reitzel is chakim to learn it.
Right.
And then you need to learn it. It's really three things going on. But let's distinguish. In other words, it's not just that he wants the result. That's b'davar. He wants reitzel is chakim. He has to
know this block Gemara. It's not going to happen.
That's not the davar. He wants the result. He wants the machine. He wants the conclusion. Then there's a reitzel is chakim. He says there's reitzel ba'davar, reitzel is chakim.
Is that ratzon or midas?
It's very straightforward. There's nothing complicated about it.
Why is ratzon not midas?
We're not talking midas here. We're talking a desire. Why are you confusing? How did midas come into here?
He wants for himself.
No. Who says why he wants it? I mean, the person is ratzon. Ratzon is a ratzon. Person wants to learn. What are you suggesting? All ratzon is midas? Is that your question?
That's what I understood until now.
No, I'm saying you always think that Kesser and Midas and Zoh is the same thing.
I sort of get it mixed up.
But I'm asking you, is the desire of a person and his emotions the same thing in your mind?
They certainly interlap, and here we made a big skill.
Chesed is an emotion, love. Is love and desire the same thing? No, because desire can be for many things. You could also desire not to love. You could also desire to do things that are not emotional. A will. It's a will. It's a willpower to want something. It could be a irrational want. It could be something that's destructive even. That's not good for you. And it's a rather other discussion. I told you midas that are tivim, the Rebbe Rashab before did call ratzon, natural inclinations.
That's why it's confusing.
But we're talking about midas if it's loving God. Loving God. There's a love for God, a conscious love for something. Or loving a human being, loving someone, a stranger, and marrying that person. Is this a ratzon or a midah? Now, of course, you need ratzon because if you know ratzon, you don't know motivation. But it's a midah as in, I'm attracted to this, I'm repelled by this. This is the emotion of teferes, compassion. The emotion of netzach. The emotions have very distinct personality. That's what makes them midas. Do they need a ratzon? Yeah, without ratzon, there's no engine, there's no fuel. Then it's just midas. We all have midas when we're asleep too. A person can have chesed in their soul and never act on it. You need Rachel is chesed, Rachel is chakim. Anyway, I don't know what the problem here is exactly. It's very, very straightforward. He's saying not just that you want the object, you need to want to understand the object. And because you need to want to understand, that requires.
By wanting it itself, you're not getting it. In other words, you want to understand the sugya, you're not going to understand.
That's not correct. It's not understand. You keep misunderstanding. It's not an exam. No, you want the conclusion of the matter, and then you need to want this chakim. There's a word called reitzel is chakim. That's the key.
I see that word, but
there's reitzel ba'adavar and reitzel is chakim. I gave an example. Person wants a psak din. He wants to know what to do in a certain situation. Then you need to reach this chakim. You need another desire to actually go and learn it and figure it out. So if you don't only have the ratzon to have the conclusion without the ratzon to want to understand it, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to understand it. Let's put it this way, or you'll go to somebody else to understand it. And then when he has it, how do you yet it, etc. He moves away from the core desire, and that's when he conceives and innovates. And also in this rotzon l'schakim, when he would desire to innovate and conceive, that happens only when the rotzon is in a state of makif. The rotzon cannot be there in full intensity. Because when the desire to conceive, to use your mind, is in full intensity, revealed intensity, he's not going to conceive because the desire is going to overwhelm it. Because that will confuse his wisdom. So let's explain this. So a person has a very strong drive, he wants to understand something. And the drive is so powerful, then the drive is more powerful than the mind. So that's why it needs makif. Only the way it works is when he desires to conceive, to think, to understand. And it's in a state of makif from a distance. So the desire is there. It's like you think of it like when you press the gas. So in the beginning you have to press it hard, but then afterwards you got to let go and just let the thing flow. So it's still there, keeping you going. So it still has to. If you lose your desire, you're going to stop learning. But the desire has to always be there in the background, but not with its full intensity. If Ratzon is with its full power. In other words, like a person is so driven to understand something that drive can ultimately undermine their understanding of it. Understanding requires a certain type of patience and perseverance and calm that is somewhat a step away from the intensity of the desire to understand. Like it isn't anything. Oz yaskil v'ischakim. And then Oz yaskil. You're not letting me learn a thing here. You're just. If you have a question, tell me the question. What's the question?
No, but it's all makif.
What's all? What do you mean all? What's all?
It's when it's a state of makif. You need.
Ratzon has to be in a state of remove, like hovering from a distance. That's all.
But then you said it when it's intense.
When it's intense and it's not makif,
it's not
then
makif at that point. It's closer makif.
It doesn't say that. He says it's a state of. He doesn't say not makif. He says when it's a state of full intense revelation. Makif here means removed from a distance. That's what the key word here. Don't compare it to other makif anywhere else. Don't bring other ideas in. It's a very straightforward idea. That seichel has to be there. I'm sorry, Ratzon is what drives it, gets it going, and then it cannot be there. If a person is so willing, so driven by understanding something, they won't end up having the patience to just read it patiently, slowly, and understand it.
Apply themselves.
You have to. It's a separate. Seichel and Ratzon are not the same thing. Seichel requires mesinus, patience, as I said, deliberation, slow process. Ratzon doesn't think like that. If the Ratzon L'Schakim is going to say, why don't you understand it already? Move faster. I want to understand it. I want to get it. That's Ratzon's language. Seichel doesn't speak like that. Seichel says, I need patience, I need time. You see the difference? That's the key. It's teaching us the boundaries of the Kav HaMidah. This is the key to everything in life that's successful. You'll see people who are not able to really excel because they don't know where to stop with one thing and they let everything just becomes one big bundle. The ability to organize yourself, say now I'm going to do this, then comes step 2, then step 3, is the key to progress. And you want to try to rush the process, you end up compromising it. That makes sense? That's the key point that he's making here. And then he will conceive and innovate. That's why I said the steps have to be broken, because we don't really define them this way. When you want to sit down, let's say, learn Ayin Beis, the Ratzon is just an automatic thing. It's like your routine. You want to do it. But if you really dissect it, the Ratzon is the desire. The desire is maybe very strong. Then comes the process of actually learning it. And you need both. Without one or the other, you won't get there. So again, we see from this. So when the Ratzon is revealed, you can't have then the revelation of Seichel. Again, revelation, he means full intensity. It doesn't mean that there's no Ratzon. But if it's not limited in some way, if it's so much like the drive that someone wants something, you ever see somebody who's really, like you said, Baal Ritzainus. People are very driven, and this is what I want, and I want it now. So a person like that is not going to get anywhere with Seichel. Seichel doesn't work. It could be even an adult. Adults that are very driven, and whatever it may be. Listen, sometimes it's an akshas de kedusha. It can be an abstinence of a holy abstinence. Someone that says this is the way it's going to be, and is not interested in any discussion. Like a melech dictating, this is the way it is. But more often it's like in the negative. It's not just a matter of patience. It's allowing Seichel to do his job. It has to go with it's a process. So going back to Rusa Deliba. Rusa Deliba is the desire to be with God, to be absorbed in God. It's a desire. Seichel, it doesn't work that way. Seichel wants to understand it step by step. Seichel absorbs slowly, and so on. But when you're consumed by that, you're suddenly in the presence of something, and you're completely consumed. That's why Seichel doesn't work then. Even if Seichel brought you there, but once the party started, like I said yesterday, the excitement's there. You're now in the excitement. The Seichel is nevad. That's the whole point. For those unique individuals where it's not lost because of Ava V'Tainugim or because their Meichen is on that level, and they are like, they understand the Eifenhaf flaw, and that's another story. Because they've already used their Seichel so well, they've come to a refined place that when that happens, their Seichel can also be there. But for the rest of us, Seichel is far more behind that ecstasy. Basically, the ecstasy of the divine and Seichel are not going to be functioning very well side by side. A person who can do both together, say a lot of l'chaim, and his mind is working even better, requires a very, very refined and elevated mind.
Seichel is cold and calculated, and the ecstasy is basically all tzavarim.
Yeah, and not like Midas. That was the key. It's an ecstasy that's not like Midas. Midas is a different thing. Midas is as they said, Midas is what we call it, acquired taste, acquired desires, and this is the natural desire. Okay, so Ki'im kasher nifsik u'misalam haratzon. When can seichel work well is when nifsik, when it was paused, when the desire was paused and misalam and concealed. V'nisharak efes katseyu, and only a little edge of it remained. Ozu is galas ha-seichel. That's when the seichel emerges. So it's not complete concealment, but it needs to basically subside. What's the word?
Wax and wane.
It needs to subside to allow the next step to emerge. Okay, so we covered the first Kav HaMidah, the role of the Kav HaMidah on the example with Keser and Chochmah. Keser and Moichin. Now he says, V'cheinu b'Moichin HaMidas. Same thing as with Moichin HaMidas. Same thing, you need again a measure. The Kasher Moichin Hem Bizgalis, when intelligence is revealed, your cognitive tools, faculties are at full intensity. Ef Shalias is Galas HaMidas. There cannot be the emergence and the revealing, the emergence of emotions. Only when it's again nifsik, when it's paused and concealed, the light, the energy of the mind. You see, it's interesting. He doesn't say moichin; he says eir ha-moichin, because it's an energy flow, intelligent energy. Oz yochaliyas is galas hamidus. That's when there can be the revelation of an emergence of the mitzvah, ukaneda, as it's known. Ukiyadua, as it's known. Interestingly, he just said it before in the parentheses, which is one of the reasons I know that this parentheses was written afterwards. He just said that. He said it clearly. The parentheses, remember with the Keiches Nalamim, he says, Meichin and Midas cannot reside side by side. Right there. The base is Galas HaMeichin L'mayla Midas. Midas Mevalbla L'Meichin. Okay, fine. And now I think I understand the parentheses even better. Because now he's saying the same Kav HaMidah that controls that Ratzon has to be concealed for Moichin to arise, also controls that Moichin has to be concealed for Midas to arise. So seemingly, Rusa Deliba, the excitement, so he distinguishes between the two. How Keser deals with the Moichin, and how Moichin deals with Midas. And I'm just qualifying because it's it's very clear. It's a different type of, it's not the same idea, it's the same principle that one has to be concealed for the other to reveal, but for different reasons. The three different reasons we discussed. But so yes, that one has to be concealed for the other to emerge, clear, but why? And how they function differently. So it's very different reasons. So it just shows you the Kav HaMidah, it's not just a what we call it, an arbitrary Kav HaMidah that just limiting flows. It actually, in each situation, it regulates the flow according to its particular personality of those particular entities. Good. You want to say something? What? Then he goes next step. Okay. Now we're breaking it down in Moichin itself. The same thing in Moichin itself. B'chachma bina. Dagam she'nekudus ha'askola. Mislabeshes ba'asoga. So again, Chachma is the Nekudas HaSkol, spark, flash. So even though this point, this Nekuda, this point, this dot, is enclosed, manifests in Hasaga. Why? Because when you start comprehending something and let's say fleshing out an idea, the Nekuda is there, it's in there. Sharikoli Hasaga hulahavin asa Nekuda. Because the whole idea of comprehension, what are you comprehending? You're not coming up with something out of the blue. You're taking a point, like let's say a kernel of an idea, a flash, and you're developing it. To understand that point and to flesh out the details. So even though Chachma, in other words, is inside Bina, however, it's not the core of Chachma, of the idea. Shari atzmas ha-chachma hu inyan riya v'yisamtus v'hanocha shemitzad ha-yisamtus shezeh iyav shalovi v'hanocha shemitzad ha-yisamtus, I'm sorry, shezeh iyav shalovi b'asoga. Let's explain. This we also learned very, very elaborately. Because what is core chachma? we learned, and he's saying it here in brief, it's 2 points. Two elements in it. One is Nekudas HaChachma. Yeah, Chachma is a kernel. Let's say someone says an idea, 2 plus 2 is 4. Whatever. Maybe that's not a great one, but whatever it is. You have some revelation today. And then you flesh it out. The outline, you start breaking into details, But there's another element in Nekudas HaChachma, and that's called Nekudas HaSamtus, Ha'emes. And that's Etzem HaChachma. What's the Samtus? It's not just a point, Mathematically speaking, you could argue that a point is the beginning of a line. And what is a line? It's just infinite points. However, there's another element in the Nekudah of Chachma. It's not just a point of departure where you begin and you develop it. It also has a qualitative element to it, which is called, in it resides the resonance. Harisamtus, Hariyah. Number one, like you see something. When you see something, it's not just you understand it. Bina, once you flesh it out, does not have Riyah. So Chachma is like a resonance that exists in the Nekudah. Veisamtus v'ha'anocha, and that's a leitzach, that it just resonates with you. Shemitzad ha'esamtus. We discussed the different words, resonance, esamtus, and so on. Hisamtus is more almost like a ring's truth, the ringing of its truth. Resonance is similar. Hanoch is a leitzach. How do you translate? How do we say leitzach? I also translate as resonance. It's really Riyah Samtus is higher. That's like you see something and you just know it to be true because you saw it, and no one can deny that. Then you go explain it to somebody, it's more like Bina. Hanocha is a little more intellectual type of resonance as opposed to actually seeing something. It's one step below, but it's also a very deep resonance. Basically 2 types of resonance. A resonance, intellectual resonance, and a resonance that comes from actually literally like seeing it. It's a deeper element. We spoke about it as well earlier, that Riyah is higher. But here, for practical purposes, relevant to Bina,
disposition, like your disposition.
I wouldn't say disposition, no. I wouldn't say disposition.
It's a little further down in the...
No, it's not related to Bina. It's all Chachma. This is all right here. Atzmus Chachma, he's calling Riyah v'Yisamtus v'ha'nocha shemitzad ha'Yisamtus. In other words, Hisamtus is that it's a deep resonance of its truth. And Hanocha means that in your Seichel, it resonates.
It's accepted, perhaps, but that's hard to... that has a connotation of voluntary. But it is not that you want to accept it as
I'll tell you the difference. When you see something, you may not understand it at all. You know it's true, but you don't understand it. Hanoch is like a bridge between seeing and intellectual resonance, where you absolutely... Conviction is, I think, the word. Conviction.
It's evaluated.
I would say resonance and conviction. That's maybe a good word. Resonance, that, and then the conviction that comes because of that resonance. I don't know if it's the exact translation, but for practical purposes, Hanocha, when someone says in Yiddish "selektzach," like you say, like you'll come over to somebody who's experienced, and you'll say so and so. They say it sounds right. It's but it's not a person who's saying it just like that flippantly. Talking about someone who's very trained, and their sounding right is better than other people's conviction. Because they selektzach meaning I don't have proof for it yet. But but in my mind, that usually comes because a person has a certain emes, samtus, a certain sense of truth. So you recognize the truth of something, and that in turn translates into a hanocha sichlis, that's misad samtus. Anyway, but the point that he wants to make is this element cannot come into the comprehension of Bina. You can't explain this to someone. The resonance either comes or doesn't come. So Hasaga of Bina can carry the Nekudah of Chachma. The point can be carried, but its resonating truth is not really carried over. Later, we learned earlier that later when Bina comes to conclusion, it can come to Nekudas HaTamtzis, and you come to the conclusion of comprehension, and then that Nekudah is related to the Nekudah of Chachma, and even your comprehension. But comprehension on its own, very often, look at the situation. You'll often see someone, and you see this very often in business or other situations, the conceiver comes up with an idea. Like an idea of a concept. That's his role. He's not good at fleshing it out. A whole team starts fleshing it out. They bring it back to him. Hey, this is not what I conceived of. Or it's off. Why? Because Bina, its Maila is it's fleshing out and breaking into detail and you're integrating it. Its Chsaron is that it's like the Chassidus sometimes says, you can go b'derech haklasan, you can lose sight of your point of departure. Because you get so involved in the details, you went off track. And this happens very often. That's why one of the key tricks in the trade is to always write down the concept and always make sure you go back to it and say, oh, that's my reality check. Because without it, you can really go who knows how far. And I've seen this many times. Someone starts with a good intention, you start doing this, and then you come back, you built the whole binyan, and the foundation is wrong. The axiom or the assumptions were wrong. So there's a constant balance between the two. But Hasaga per se is not the Isamtus. So Chachma, besides being the Nekuda, it's also let's call it it's the nucleus of the idea. And it's critical to keep in touch with that, to keep that emes going, the resonance. Like you've seen this. I mean, I've said this by me many times. I had an idea, then I wrote it up in a long article. I read the article. Hey, this is not what I wanted to say. And I wrote it myself. Because, you sometimes don't get it. And then you go back until you get, okay, let me see my original point. Very often, when you have resonance, you'll write the last line of an article before the first. Because the punchline. And that helps tremendously, because that's the key. Now build it, or build it out. But if you don't have that, so Chachma per se, in other words, is an element that's a step away from Bina. That's what he's saying. That's not Ein Za'atzmus HaChachma. So Bina, like I say, Ein Befrat Ela Masha Beklal. Bina has nothing but coming from Chachma, but it doesn't have the klal. No, that Nakuda, that's the point. Then he says another thing. V'gam b'nekudas ha'askola, and also in the nekudas ha'askola in Chachma. V'hainu, masha Chachma b'b'chinas seichel golei. So now he's adding something. Right now, what we said was the difference between Chachma and Bina. Chachma, the hisamtus, the qualitative element of resonance and conviction of Chachma is not conveyed in Bina. But what about the seichel of Chachma? What about it being, like I said before, it's also the beginning point of a fleshed out idea. It's not just a qualitative intensity of clarity. That's another word, by the way, clarity. Certain clarity that Chachma has, the clarity of that point. So he's saying, even that's what he says, and that's the parenthesis. Even that element where Chachma becomes now, is manifesting in a revealed seichel. It's intelligent element, not the resonance element. So he's saying now, so in other words, okay, you could say Kav HaMidah works like this, that you have to limit the flow of the intensity of the qualitative intensity of Chachma's resonance. So because Bina should be able to develop the idea. Because if it was like with Ratzon before, if it was in full intensity, Chachma, Bina would be too much under the influence and overwhelmed by that energy. But what about the Seichel of Chachma? So he's saying that the truth is that even the Kudus has Seichel of Chachma, not purely as Riyah. We learned before in chapter 42, that too is primarily Hanocha resonance. Which means that even the Seichel of Chachma is also removed from Bina. And when that radiates and illuminates, what? The Samtus. Not just the Riyah, which is like we said was the qualitative. Even the Hanocha Sichlis, even this intellectual resonance, or conviction, or resonance, Ein Maniach, it doesn't leave room and space. Lein ha-seichel v'hasaga. For seichel and hasaga, he means here seichel as in Bina. Comprehension. For understanding and comprehension. Does the losnit zum hasaga se'inyan? Again, Yiddish just captures a certain reichkeit. As the losnit doesn't allow. As the losnit. Meaning, it's just simply, it's brightness and clarity doesn't allow for the space that Bina needs to develop the idea. It would be almost like the genius in the room who conceived it is standing over the shoulders of those that's supposed to break it down into details. What will happen? He'll keep, I'm speaking technically. He'll keep telling them, no, it's not this way, no, you're missing it, you're missing. Leave the room, let's do our work, we'll come back and show it to you. We're not doing anything without your approval. I'm just giving you an example of not just the perfectionism of it, it's also the intensity of it. Because you're so clear, which is very often one of the key things. I do this also very often. You want to have someone who doesn't have the clarity you have to read it and say, tell me what you think. And if you're there just to telling them what to say, that defeats the purpose. You want that type of... Because remember, we're not trying to get Chokhmah to become Bina. We're trying to get Chokhmah to reach a level that Chokhmah on its own can't reach. So someone say, I see God, beautiful. But we need to reach people who don't see God, so to speak. So you need, if you're going to just bring the people who are the prophets standing there, you're not going to leave room for anybody who's not in that state. I'm just, giving examples of it. The intensity of it simply doesn't allow. So that's all the Kav HaMidah, right? See, the lostnish, ein maniach in Hebrew, it means the lostnish, but the Yiddish is far stronger. And that I can't explain. That's more of a hisamtus. If you know Yiddish, the lostnish. The har hisamtus har is a lamaila har b'masaga. Because this resonance, this truth, the sense of truth, is much higher than comprehension. And that's why the sense, that sensation of truth and resonance, doesn't allow for the union of comprehension. And though it's explained elsewhere, like I just alluded to before. And though it explains elsewhere that with due to the vision of Chokhmah, also the comprehension of Bina will be in a higher level. He will arrive and reach into the depth and to the profundity of the ideas increasingly more. In other words, if Bina doesn't have Chokhmah radiating in it, it'll go that far, it won't go that deep. Here, that vision, that clarity will empower that also the comprehension. Ha'emes chen hu da kasher yidei etzem in b'chinas riyah. So the truth is that's correct. That when you know the thing in a form of riyah, you understand something in a form of riyah, and so really intimately connected with you in a form that you see it. Shu b'muhus hadover. That's not just the existence of it. You know the Mahus, you know the personality. And the example that Rebbe Rashab gave for Mahus, which is an excellent example to apply here, so the difference between Metzias and Mahus is, Mahus is like when you see something in the room. So we see each other right now. Then someone comes in and one of us leaves the room, so someone says, this and this person was here before. So you know the Metzias of that person on earth, but you don't know the Mahus. I'm not talking about now the personality of the person. I'm talking about that's Mahus. Mahus means direct type of, it's not through a step away saying I know it exists. No, I see its existence. I relate to its existence. Sometimes Mahus's personality, Metzias, is existence, is the actual matter, not the spirit of it. Like some people can look at two people can look at the same thing. One person sees the Metzias, the other one sees the Mahus. Metzias, you'll see the body. Mahus is the soul, or the spirit, or the inner identity. But that's the idea. So he's saying, so in truth, yes, it's true that when someone knows in a form of riyah, which means in Mahus Hadover, because when you see something, you see. When you hear about it, Shmiya, by the way, is always Metzias, riyah is Mahus. I should qualify by saying that sometimes Shmiya has other power that riyah doesn't have. That's another story. It's not relevant here. But as far as it's seeing and believing, that's why Ein Eid Nasa Dayan. A witness can never be a judge because the resonance that comes from seeing something doesn't allow you to be objective. On the other hand, hearing is far more internalized. You can see something and never understand it. You don't have Bina. Hearing is more like Shmiya. Shmiya is Bina because you can understand it, because you break it into details. So you can see a painting and repeat what you saw, but never comprehend it. As a matter of fact, someone else who may not have seen it can comprehend it better than you, because they're an expert. But the point here is that that's the Musa David. So he's acknowledging what he just asked. He asked a question. You just said that we just learned that Chochmah has to be concealed, because Isamtus can be there and it won't allow comprehension to emerge, but comprehension is going to be far deeper with that Isamtus, we learned. She says, yes, that's true. It's someone who really knows it. So he's like saying, yes, indeed, that is true. However, I'm just reading the tone here. That's the niggin here. So he comes in comprehension also to emek uprimis inyan, to the depth and the core of the idea, with very increasingly profound concepts. However, so it's true that when you have that element of Ri of Chochmah, you'll come far deeper. But arriving to those deeper things was only when the Samtus and that resonance gets concealed. So it's true that it's informing and can elevate Bina to that level, but you do need a step where it is concealed. The Kasher Samtus is because when that resonance, that vision, that truth, conviction, all those words, is revealed, Ein Ze Maniach La'asoga, does not allow you to step back and comprehend. That's the problem. In other words, he's not suggesting that Bina does not get deeper with Chochmah and cannot benefit from it. It just cannot spread its wings. That's the problem. Because the intensity of Chochmah will just be the dominating element. And you need to step back. You need a Helam to be able to break it down. Like, if someone's standing in front of the Melech, or standing in Holy of Holies, in awe, they don't have the ability at that time to sit down and write a detailed article, what I just experienced, so others can understand. So of course, the vision of it, the experience is going to inform, but the actual process of being a process requires stepping away. So he's just adding that he's not suggesting that there is no being informed, no relationship. That process requires a boundary, basically, is what he's saying here. Rather, only when this isamtus, this sense of resonating truth, is concealed. And nevertheless, he still retains the idea that he knows the core and etzimuhus, the core idea. Then the comprehension will be increasingly more and profound. So in other words, he's saying similar to what he said before about Ratzon. Remember, he said Ratzon also is needed, this chakim. You want to sit down and conceive, you need a desire. But if the desire is hovering over in full intensity, you're never going to be able to step. So it needs to be makif merachik.
It's overwhelming.
Right. It has to step back. It's almost like a guide from a distance. Here too, Chochmah remains there. Of course, the person who actually has that resonance. We're not talking about someone who doesn't. Someone who doesn't, clearly, like let's say a teacher and a student. So clearly the student does not have the emes of the Chochmah of the teacher. So that's clear. The student can't really comprehend until the teacher slows down his intensity. But then he asks the question, but what about the fact that Chochmah does enrich Bina in the sense it gives it a depth, and someone has it. Let's say someone does have it. Even then, Chochmah needs to be abated and needs to stand back a little to allow the development of the idea, or else the process won't take hold. So and yet at the same time he knows the truth of it. So it's like a person who's the conviction is there, but if he's so dominated by the conviction, number one, practically he's not going to have the patience to develop it and make an argument out of it, and number two, the intensity will not allow anything to happen. So again, it comes down to Bina plays a critical role of developing an idea that is so that a resonating idea need to develop and make a case for it. That requires a process of somewhat abating, somewhat what we call concealing the samtus, the resonating element. Yeah.
Putting it aside. Putting it aside.
Now, was there a mimer he mentioned before? Uh-oh. See this again. When I see that, I right away think there's a line missing here. I'm thinking maybe.
No, but they wrote something in the bottom.
I see what they wrote. Yeah, but the Friedrich Rebbe Rashab writes Hanal. I don't remember this Maimer being mentioned in the last 10 pages. So what's he say? B'da Hanal. Below they write Ba'al Eishcha Tafrei Shayin Gimel Perek Kuf Lamed Ches. He didn't even refer to Perek Kuf Lamed Ches. Do you remember Perek Kuf Lamed Ches? Actually, he did. You know what he referred to? What Kuf Lamed Ches? Let me see what it says there. Remember Kuf Lamed Ches? Professor, doctor.
I just remember you mentioned it. I don't remember. 2-3 days of it.
Oh, Kuf Lamed Ches is this thing. What I just said. That we learn about the difference between Riyah and Hanocha. So Ibda Hanal is basically saying that he was going to mention it before. Let's see. Here's the problem. Here he says Commissions Borleil Perek Mem Beis. You see? And they're writing B'da Hanal. I don't know. They may be wrong. The mistake. It may be referring to Perek Mem Beis. Let me see Perek Mem Beis.
No, because over here it's Kuflam Ches talking about the Siklas.
But so is Perek Mem Beis. Let me see something here. Yeah. Actually, in Kuf Lamed Ches, he refers to Perek Mem Beis too. Okay, I got to do a little investigation here. I think what's going on here. Let me just see something.
We're not part of the board of the people who wrote things on the bottom.
I know who wrote it.
Elidar?
No, this is Yankel Chazan problem. Listen, human beings. I'm not saying it's wrong. I don't want to jump to conclusions. It's definitely in Ba'al Eishcha. See, look in the beginning about Kuf Lamed Ches. U'K'moshn is Borleil Perek Mem Beis. So there it's also. So I have to look. But he says Da Hanal. I know what happened. The Rebbe Rashab, when he went back the fourth time and he added chapters, before there were chapters, how did he refer to a previous Maimer? By Maimer. But some places the Rebbe Rashab either missed or for some reason did not write a chapter. So this remained from that time. So generally he wrote chapters. He changed. We can see clearly he changes from Dibra Maskal Ba'al Eishcha, he would change Perek Mem Beis. Or Perek Kuf Lamed Ches. And here he's referring Da Hanal. It's still the first, like in the early draft, Da Hanal. He left the Maimer, not the Perek.
So who the guys that these footnotes you don't know?
Yeah, I know that. I know that, but the footnote is correct. What they're saying is definitely correct. I don't know if but it could be because he says Hanal. That's what bothered me. Hanal would mean that before by Perek Mem Beis probably also said Hanal, Da Ba'al Eishcha, and he changed that to Ba'al Eishcha. But Perek Mem Beis is not Ba'al Eishcha. That's the point. That's what I think happened here. They've said before Commissioners Borleil probably said what Maimer is Perek Mem Beis. What? Dvorim? So he probably wrote El Dvorim. That's what I would suspect. So now he's saying Da Hanal is referring to this, and they took Da Hanal and they a different Maimer, which also talks about this, but it's not. That's what my speculation. This is my I would say Kar of Levada.
He says Malach Siklas.
I know it's Perek Mem Beis. He says, look, the Rebbe Rashab himself zeichens it, so he knows what he's zeichen. I'm saying the Hanal is Bostama that. Okay, fine. So what is Zer Mashins Borleil B'da Hanal? They're taking the Perek Lamed Ches. I would say Perek Mem Beis. Because Shemiyageya Be'eze Inyan She'ena Muven. Yeah, it says it in both places. I'm convinced that this is wrong. It should say Perek Mem Beis, and also Perek Lamed Ches, and the Hanal is from that Perek Mem Beis. I'm going to have that check also. I'm ready to bet that it said here Commissioners Borleil Da El Dvorim. What Simba Mishpat is the Maimer? Simba Mishpat, sorry.
If it would say that, then how could they write Kuf Lamed Ches? If it would say that clearly.
It didn't. It says Hanal. It does say Hanal. But they Hanal, they went and found where it discusses in which Maimer.
Yeah.
But they didn't realize that Hanal is referring to what it says here, Commissioners Borleil Perek Mem Beis. It's not a terrible mistake. I mean, that's where they got it from. I'm assuming that's what happened. Because this idea is in Perek Mem Beis also. What does it say there? That a person harvis kashemiya gay when someone exerts himself be'eze inyan she'ena moving in something that is not in an idea that's not understood. The neifel besichle shu be'efen kach v'kach, and in his mind falls as he's struggling with it, as he's working on it. Suddenly an idea falls into his mind that it's so and so. U'mishyashev etzla inyan, and it's misyashev etzla. It settles into him, and it like says, yeah, this sounds right. And when he wants to bring it into comprehension, it's a dain ein musik. He can't yet bring it into. It's not really comprehensible. Just like two people learning, and someone will say, I think I know what this means, but he can't really explain it yet. He just senses that. This is the reason for this is because in the beginning he only had this type of hanocha sichlis, this conviction. And by Eitzah, this is all we learned earlier. And the Eitzah, what's the solution in this case? Yeah, this same Yiddish, everything was there in both in Pei Beis, Kamul Lamed Ches, and here. The Eitzah is Shikashat, he should bind himself. Tzutrag means to pay more attention, to cleave. Tzutrag would be dedicate yourself, more committed. More absorbed, more focused, more concentration. To concentrate more. How was by him when he had that conviction? In other words, he has a conviction, he can't really explain it.
What was he thinking about when he got it?
Right.
Yeah.
What was the state of mind when he?
Yeah, right, exactly. What was his state of mind? Like going back to that point.
Interesting.
1 second. No, but he said this several times, this idea. Okay. And with this type of connection, this type of binding himself to this focus, back to what it was like when he first had that resonance, that conviction, when he binds himself again to what was in the beginning, how he began the process. No, what's happening is like this. A person had a certain conviction. He started learning and he didn't understand it. He's not understanding it. It's only in his mind falls an idea, I think this is what it's like, and it really senses. But he can't explain it. The idea is to go back to your original point of departure, when you had the conviction. Okay. Then he's in a state of descent, like a step below from the core resonance, conviction. It is Shem abgetrotten ma'anocha mamish, v'shayich yesel asichli me'el ha'avona, me'el ha'nocha. V'adezei yovei el ha'sogasein. Okay, I'll translate this.
Probably good marital therapy. What did I see in her? And then you think back.
Okay, we have like this. A person had a certain, chachma, zanocha, a certain conviction of an idea. He began and sat down to start developing it. As he begins developing it, he's confused. He says, "She'ena moving." Yeah, he's like confused, or like confused. That's not understood. As he's thinking about it, some idea falls in that makes sense, but he's still in the middle of the process. But he can't really put it down on paper or communicate because doesn't really have words for it. Doesn't have comprehension. So the Eitzah is go back to your point of departure from the beginning. But now you're already no longer at your point of departure. Now you've already began the process of Bina. And as you do that, what will happen is, because now you're in an in-between place, you had the Hanocha in the beginning, you're coming now to certain elements that you sense are right. By connecting, you'll be able to bring the Hanocha into Seichel. That's what he's saying here. So if you stay by Chochmah, there's no development for it. If you stay in the development and you're confused, you may have a sense, but you're not really able to explain it. Reconnect to Chochmah, And then your bina will be informed by it. So you're no longer in chachma because it's a comprehensive level. But the comprehension will be able to explain in logical terms what was resonating in your mind. Huh? That's the key. It's a beautiful idea because many of us sometimes, in communication, you're sure of something. Let's say you're right. Even I'm not talking about abstinence where a person is just what they call an einredenish, just convince themselves they're right. But let's say someone's actually right, but you can't communicate it. This is an exercise in humility. Instead of getting impatient and angry and so on, you step back and you go back to it, and then that informs your seichel and helps. I said before that point, very often it happens, you're writing, and you sense some things are right, but you don't really, so you go back to your point of departure, that informs, and then it helps you develop the bina further. And she says, so you're ready, Agetrat. He says, and he now has a relationship more to the seichel than to the resonance and conviction. And through that he'll come to comprehend it actually. Because he's bringing basically the best of both worlds. The core truth, the kernel of emes, but it's no longer in the intensity, in the belly of Chachma. It's as it's emerging in Bina. That's essentially what he's saying.
What's the touch of shame?
Shame?
Shame. I think it's the same as shame.
As shame. As shame, it's like shame. Shine.
Is ready.
Already. He's already removed, abgetrotten, stepped away from Hanocha Mamish. Yeah.
That point is already.
Sometimes Shein is spelled Shin Vav Yud Nun.
This is
Yud Nun. It's the same. Yiddish, you sometimes say shame, you could say both. The older Yiddish is a little more like this.
The old Russian.
I heard it, I don't know, hopefully not. There's a story from Mendel Putterfass.
Please.
They said, what did he do in Siberia? He said, I thought through the Blat Gemara I learned in Cheder. He said, Mendel, you weren't paying attention in Cheder. You were not the best student in Cheder. I sat there when I was in Siberia, and I thought, who was the boy sitting next to me? Who was the boy sitting in front of me? Who was the teacher? Where was I? What was I? And slowly I would hear the words of the Gemara, and I got enough of the Gemara that I was able to remember the entire Gemara.
Very nice.
Wow.
It's interesting.
That's in his book?
I heard it from someone.
Because he wrote a book about that.
Okay. Thank you. This is the difference when the Hizgabrus is Hanocha. I'm saying Oz Hasichli Behelam. I'm saying not Oy. This is the difference when the Hanocha is Hizgabrus, when the Chachma, in other words, when the resonance, when the conviction is Hizgabrus is overwhelming or full intensity, at full strength, dominant. Oz Hasichli Behelam. Then the Seichel part is concealed.
This is all in Chachma.
Chachma is Hanocha, Sichli is Bina, or either way. And when the intelligent part, the comprehended part, is revealed, then the conviction is concealed. And that's when there'll be a comprehension. Yeah. Even though they can come together, even one informs the other, but the bottom line is one in full intensity, in full glory, is going to compromise the other from emerging. Hari to be izgal sachachmi yef shalias hasagas habina to bina. So we go back to the same idea that when the chachma is revealed, there cannot be the comprehension of bina. Ki'im kasher misalam era chachma nishar v'nisharak efes katseyu. The same words used before with midas ameichen or rotzen. That when the era chachma, the energy of chachma, of wisdom, is concealed, and only a small edge of it remains, then there will be the comprehension of bina. He's really breaking down here, dissecting something we learned far earlier, if you remember Milo Mata. He spoke about how hierarchy is created. It's a very similar idea, that you need to have that perfect measure, that everything is more, not less, to allow the structure to emerge. So we see from this, all of this is like summing it up now, that that in the faculties of the soul, when there's the revelation of a higher power, of a higher faculty, ef shalias is galus koyach, as he says below, koyach hatachten. Cannot be the emergence and revelation of a lower faculty. Only when it stops and pauses, and concealed the higher power is concealed or pauses, only then will there be the emergence of the lower faculty. Now he's concluding this. Same thing is above. In the emanation of the spheres, when a higher sphere. This is all Keiches HaNefesh, which was the example he began with back in page Shinud Gimel 313, with the faculties. Same like the faculties by us, that this is the way they function, that the higher faculty has to be concealed for the lower faculty to emerge. The same thing is with the Nishtalshel, they emerge. These all evolve from the spheres of Atzilus, that the emanation of the spheres is only this way. When the higher sphere radiates in a revealed way, cannot be the creation and the emanation and the emergence of a lower sphere. And for there to be the creation and emanation and emergence of a lower sphere, is hefsek. There has to be a pause, a stop, to the extension, to the expression, the expansion of the higher sphere. And this is the Kav Amida. That's the Kav Amida. That there should be a limit, a controlled flow, to confine the expansion of the spheres in order to allow for the lower sphere to emerge. So there's a Kav Amida that's actually regulating the flow. Remember Butzin the Kadin said, and this is why the Kav Amida is Gvura. Remember we said the Kav Amida comes from Pishtan, from flax. It's a rope, and flax grows from the earth, but it separates. That's why Bad it grows separately, as opposed to Knei Amida, the reeds that grow from the water, which is Chesed. And now what's the explanation? What's the Gvura? Shazel lifel hagbola v'heder ispashtu sasfiras. Because that's what Gvura is. That's exactly. Poel Hagbola. Gvura is a limiter. It's a constrictor. It constricts the flow to cause the Hagbola to confine and limit the heder and stop the expansion. Restraining the expansion of the spheres. So the Kav Amida is a Gvura Dika force. What time do we have? Huh?
10:56.
I think we'll stop here. We're starting now another. It's still gonna. We'll finish it. Okay, so let's stop here. So we did the bottom of page 314 to the bottom of 315. We're still in chapter 1, the long chapter 158. Do you mind?
Can I ask you something?
Bottom of page again. Bottom of page 315 in chapter 158.
Can I ask you something?